Can you hear me?
Hi, Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So the light's closest to the screen. So it's okay. I'll just,
You want some ambiance?
there we go. We can see again.
Yeah, that is much better.
Sure, would like to call the meeting to order?
I would like to call the meeting to order. It is 5:02. Do we have anyone scheduled for public comment?
We do not have anyone signed up this week.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Does anybody have any comments or questions?
No.
I make a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve. No, someone to do that? Okay.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That puts us into the workshop, and I will turn it over to our fearless leader.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Shay's, at the last meeting, we did Article 1, and you all asked us for some research. So Shay's gonna go over her research and kind of find an idea of what y'all want to keep, what you don't want to keep, and we'll move to Article 2. Just so you know, we can always go back to an article. So as you get to Article 3 or 4, you go, oh, wait a minute, I have a question about that. We're gonna do the research and we'll bring it back to you. So nothing is set in stone until you have a final report that you're ready to present to City Council. But we're just going in chronological order because it's just easier for me to keep track that way, but we can always go back at any point in time.
Okay, so I researched a couple of questions with regards to section 1.03E and F. Section 1.03E, do we have red lines? Oh, well, I'll just read it about F. It's true.
I didn't print off the packet.
Yes.
240 pages.
Okay, so anyway, section 1.03E is the section that reads, to the full extent allowed by law, to require that any person, utility, or company making use of the city streets or property to provide any services to the public first obtain the written consent of the city to license, permit, franchise, ordinance, or otherwise. A franchise shall not be valid for more than 50 years. So the subject of franchise was a topic of discussion at the last meeting. The first question that I researched was whether there are any utilities that don't actually have automatic entry to the right of way, and whether they are actually still required to get a franchise. And the answer is yes. Electric transmission and distribution companies, utilities, and gas utilities are still required to obtain a franchise from the city. The next question was whether or not there are still any franchises being done with the city, and the answer is yes. In keeping with the first question, we do actually have franchise agreements in place with CenterPoint for both gas and electric. And then we also have an agreement for a franchise agreement for solid waste. So we do still need to keep language in here about franchise agreements. We have contracts in place that need to be preserved. Another question was how long a franchise could last under state law, because right now the charter says it can't last more than 50 years. I wasn't able to find anything that specifically required that 50 years to begin with. Trying to think through from a policy standpoint why maybe that was originally put in there. I know in the context of use of municipal property, you know, when we lease property, typically we're limited to something along 50 years because otherwise you run into, well, have you actually granted some sort of real estate interest? And since this does relate to the use of streets, I wondered if maybe that might be, but that is pure speculation on my part. That said, I did also look at some of the benchmark cities to see what other cities are doing. And you do see a variety. You see it as little as 20 years in Denton, Frisco, Louisville, Richardson, and Tyler, 25 years at College Station and McKinney, 30 years in Allen, and then Pearland, like us, does also have a franchise for 50 years.
And so like using solid waste as an example, the contract between the city and solid waste, I'm assuming is not a 50-year contract.
No, it is a 10-year contract. So the franchise agreements that we have in place are electric franchises for 30 years, gas is for 30 years, and then solid waste is 10 years.
Okay.
And that is to allow them time to amortize the cost because we require them to buy new vehicles. Because we like to have nice shiny vehicles that are up to date, top of the line emissions and stuff. So we do give a 10-year franchise to them, just for amortization purposes.
Okay.
All right, so those were pretty much all the questions I looked at for 1.03E. And then I also looked at some of the language in 1.03F because there was a question as to whether some of the terms could be removed. I think there was a question as to whether cable and telecommunications both needed to be included in there. They do have very different and distinct definitions under state law. So we would recommend that we do keep both of them in there. And I think it was also suggested, could we change solid waste to waste? Solid waste also has a very specific definition under state law. So we would recommend that that stay in as well.
And then go back to 103E,
Yes.
just generic question, how come Easy Fiber and all the other Comcast don't also have a franchise agreement since they're also accessing essentially the same areas as electric, gas?
Yes, because the state has enacted legislation that preempts the city's right to keep them out of our right of way.
Okay.
They have automatic entry under state law.
And they have automatic dollar amounts.
Yes.
If they get to come in, FCC as well as Texas. We have a lawsuit that's been pending 5 years now, 4 years now.
Oh, the FCC one is,
So the FCC one's very old, but we were part of 2 class actions with the FCC trying to get them to at least give us decent rates. And then when the state law changed, we joined into the state, but that's not going anywhere.
That's the one you were talking about previously. Right.
Could be,
There's a bunch of cities involved and
yeah, that's several, we do
Well,
a
and
lot
then
of
the other one,
class action.
at the first one, we talked about the kill it bill or.
Oh,
I
that's our
think-
bill, it's 2127, that's a different one, that's a more recent
Yeah,
lawsuit,
I think I know we talked about that one at the first one.
Yeah.
and the Death Star bill.
The Death Star, that's what they, the kill it, I mean, general idea.
So based on Shay's research, our recommendation for 103 would be to leave it as is on 103E, but on F, change cable television just to cable and leave solid waste and delete taxi cab and bus.
Everybody good with that?
Right, and so just to clarify, I thought last time there was a
Notes.
possible deleting all of E, but that was because we thought franchises were no longer applicable.
yes.
We've checked it, it is applicable, hence just leave it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I would just ask,
Yeah, that's good.
not necessarily advocating for this, but since our contracts are shorter, I mean, would we want to consider making that franchise? I mean, would there be any benefit? I mean, would there, if someone has a franchise, for example, they have their 50-year franchise, they get their 30-year contract. Is there any benefit to getting those closer together, or do they have any additional like contracting power with the city because they already have the franchise? I mean, is there any?
All I could think of was if there's a renewal clause,
Okay.
but I typically don't even want to do a 30-year because I hate to think of how many city councils out will
Yeah,
have to deal with whatever action I've taken now. But if you'd like to suggest that we make.
no,
that
I just thought maybe we'd talk about.
So you can't go over 50, but the longest is 30 for.
Yeah, I was just thinking if we wanted to make it shorter to match up, if there would be any benefit to the city.
When you free it up sooner, we have a better chance of renegotiating based on cost instead of just CPI. Then things are gonna change in 50 years, they're gonna change in 30 years. So that's
I mean,
a good suggestion.
could you write it where well, I guess, do they technically get that franchise first and then they contract?
Well, the franchise is a contract.
Oh, so
That's
the
the-
franchise on the car, okay, I thought it was like I thought you had to get a franchise and then you were eligible to get a contract. No, it's.
No,
am I-
negotiated contract, we call it a franchise,
Oh.
and this is the maximum term we could enter into, but I can tell you under our watch, we're never gonna do a 50-year agreement. Unless it's a land lease at UH.
I mean, it might be something we want. I mean, does anyone else have thoughts about shortening that if we're saying we'd never do that? Maybe pulling it back to the 25, like,
Well, you had said most of the cities were doing 20, 30, except Pearland was 50.
Yeah, so Pearland is the only other one at 50, so it is,
the
our
trend.
cities are tend to be the
That might
outlier.
be
Um,
something we want.
so, yeah, it's
So we
20,
may want
25,
to
and 30.
consider looking at that and bringing it down from 50 to maybe 25 or 20.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to consider.
Kara? I think she said she agreed.
Yeah, I think I heard her say she agreed too.
Would you change that? It wouldn't
Yeah,
incur.
I agree.
That's what it-
It's actually
I think it
down.
should be.
Sorry, what did you say? Can you say it again, Tara?
I said I agree with you. I think it should be reduced. 50 years is a long time.
So what number would you like to suggest to city council?
I mean, at that 25, it looks like it's, if we were gonna try to get in line with other,
25?
Yeah.
just if,
Yeah.
and if you talk to other staff member and see if anybody, if there's any feedback that that's too short with anyone, we could always.
That's not gonna be,
You do the research, and that-
25 is not gonna give anybody heartburn.
50 does seem like a long
Let's
time.
go be negotiated anyway, right?
But no,
It is the max they can
that is the most that city council will be able to approve. So any changes you make on this charter, so any suggestions you make go to city council, then it goes, they pick and choose, and then it goes to the electorate to vote. And then whatever they vote goes in here, and then we are bound until the next charter election. So whatever is in here, they cannot, you can
That's at
negotiate
15.
less.
Oh,
And now
Let's
that's
go with
gonna
that.
probably be a problem for like electric.
Yeah, Center Point may have
Yeah,
issues
they're not
with
gonna do
that.
that. That would be too short for amortization costs. of the
We're gonna
pipes.
take Center Point out.
try that.
Do you like having electricity?
So 25 sounds like,
sounds reasonable.
sounds like it gives,
I mean, we could say 3, the
flexibility.
city council just say no and make it 25.
Right,
And then it can still fail in the electric, so a reasonable sounds 25.
right.
It's half of what you currently have.
Yeah. Okay, we're all good?
Yeah.
Good call, thank you.
Okay, that's all I had in my notes.
We had-
For Article 1,
There was the, on 105 on the red line. I think I'd add something about, any value to adding the text from the model.
on 901.
About 1.05 Charter Commission about adding, amendments. And I think someone copied it in there. And so, I mean, as I look at it, it's like, okay, it's a lot of words. I'm not sure it's adding a lot of value. But I'm just wondering, or is we basically saying the only way to amend this charter is via Charter Commission versus anything else? And so that still, it sounds like that's work. There's not a problem. But I was just asking, was there any value there that anyone saw?
We do have the right to amend for grammar and updates without going to the electorate.
Right.
I believe that's actually this evening's.
1.07, non-substantive.
Okay, non-substantive.
I think the only, when I read through it gave 4 ways to amend the charter, and one was obviously a commission. And it said the ordinance by the council, but I think we're likely going to the commission. And then I guess the voters can bring an amendment or proposal. And so I think what this is doing by not giving all those options is not giving all those options.
Oh, okay, I now I understand your question.
So was there, so I, looking, sometimes I was just looking what was in the model versus what we had. I remember it had a section on, here's how to amend the charter.
Now I understand your question.
Yeah,
Okay, so when we're gonna get a little bit farther down, we're gonna get into initiative and referendum. And that is when the citizens have the ability to.
okay, so there's another mechanism to do
Make
it
a
via that.
petition, yes, sir.
Okay, so then I withdraw.
That's very good. I'm glad you saw that because as we go through this, we're gonna see a lot of model provisions that we may have parceled out and put in other places.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And so definitely keep mentioning these. That's very helpful.
Okay, so
But yes, those are in there.
no, well, here. Okay. Thank you for doing that, as a consideration.
And before we move to 2, I just have one comment, and I'm sorry, I forgot, my day's been crazy, I forgot my notebook. It's not that organized, but I forgot it, so I don't know what section it is in number 1, but,
Which I put in mine.
oh yeah, thank you. The one that says we meet every 5 years unless they call it, I was just wondering if we wanted to move that to 10. To give, and then if something needed to be looked at, the city could call it. I didn't know if that was anything, or if 5 is something everyone's very comfortable with.
I'm comfortable with 5.
You like the box,
Some
okay.
cities like San Antonio have a standing charter committee that's
Okay.
constantly meeting, and
Constantly, okay.
Plano doesn't have one unless it's requested.
Okay, interesting. I was just wondering if that would give more flexibility for, if. Because a lot of this stuff is very minor, because it's been gone over so much. But if no one's interested in that,
I'm
if
happy
everyone's
with
good
5
with
because
the 5.
that guarantees that there will
It's looked
be
at.
a group of people here double checking everything.
Okay,
And if the city council feels there's something immediate, they can call one for
Right.
faster.
so you feel, and yeah, if everyone feels like 5 is the good,
I wouldn't go less because we now have councils that are 3-year terms, and so this way you make sure you're getting.
Yeah.
different council
I was
members.
thinking of if we wanted to make it more, since there's minor changes. It
It's having
seems
that
like,
much
but
fun.
If you look back through the revisions, you'll see all the different years they
Mhm.
changed. There are little tweaks here.
Here and there,
Yeah.
yeah,
Every once in a while, you'll see a slug.
yeah. Okay, I just wanted to bring it up, see what,
Yeah.
take the temperature on it, I did.
Okay.
So if we're doing the Article 1, we can move to Article 2.
Yep.
And you have a printout in front of you. I will try to, bring you a copy of the articles each time. It's just this last agenda, since I sent you all the models, it was just too paper heavy and yeah. Apparently, they'll basically told me no. And I do whatever he tells me to do. So if you would like to just start at the top and work your way through.
Section 2.01, election and term. You have to read silently. If you have any questions or comments, we'll give it about 10 minutes. And then
I've got it.
you got one already, all right.
I'm good.
Okay.
Got several questions, or good, just move.
Go for it.
Okay, so, I'll put out 2 or 3 thoughts and just, because it was a brain dump. So what we learned, I think, at the end of last session was that the, frequency of elections is, year 1, you take the 4 districts positions. Year 2, you take the 3 at-large positions. In year 3, you have 0, and then you repeat, rinse and repeat. And so first of all, where was that articulated when we voted on it, to go to 3-year terms? Was that clear in the thing, that 430? I mean, where is that is that in an ordinance somewhere? Doesn't necessarily in the charter? The fact that it goes 430 on the elections.
So before they went from 3 years, we did 2 years, and so it was 4 1 year and 3 the next. And so they kept the 4 and just rolled it to the next. And so we could no longer say odd or even, but in 201, we didn't split it out.
Okay, so, all right. Okay, so where I was going was, okay, so 430 is what we've had for a while, I guess, in that sense. So what was going through my mind was 2 things then was, as I looked at the model, not model, but the other benchmark charters, it seemed like almost everybody at large. Except for 1, which had at large, but you had to leave, 4 of them had to live in one of the wards or districts. I think if I looked at that correctly. So it made me think, and yes, a little bit of my reference is the school board, so I do have a point of reference there. So, I realize we're not trustees, we're representatives, or I think the city council is supposed to be representatives, but it just made me, it was interesting, everybody else has at large. So is there something there? And the other thing went through my mind was, I would prefer to have some type of election every year to help just keep a normal cadence for people to be voting. And I'm a little uneasy with a 4 in 1 year, that's a quorum. You could change out the whole, dynamic of the city council in one, election year. So while we've got a good city council now, and I'm not worried about the current city council, it's one of these things, when we look at provisions, what risks or things that could happen, or what happens when you get the evil city council in, and you need to make some changes, the voters want to make some changes, or voters can make some changes and make it real bad. So I know, I guess the 2 questions I had was there any consideration of just making them all at large? Although maybe you could say, people to give some representation, have the districts that, these positions, you need people living in each of these, so you have some representation from that standpoint. But again, everybody's voting. And then should we do something where it's maybe 2, 2, 3 in terms of voting? So you can have a cadence every year you're voting, and you don't have a risk of a whole quorum being changed out in 1 year.
Idea.
So kind of 2 thoughts in there, but you can see how they were kind of building on each other. So just help, those were some thoughts.
I am going to interrupt you on one part. As far as voting at large, we can't do that. So the Federal Voting Rights Act, Section 5 requires one person, 1 vote. And so some of the older cities that are still at large, I have no idea how they are making it. But we have, they just recently stopped pre-clearance, but we have been pre-cleared every time because we do have the districts. Pasadena, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, did a redistricting and had a pretty big lawsuit against them because they gerrymandered some stuff around and they diluted the vote. Right now, it's hard, we just did redistricting last fall. We finished up in August. Hard to believe that we actually have almost an exactly perfect district. And so we do use a law firm that's federally recognized for that, but I would very much strongly urge you not to consider at large because you have a federal.
I'm next to you. I would argue against that
Okay.
very strongly.
I like the idea that my section elects someone preferably that lives in my section
Right.
to represent me versus everyone suddenly getting elected from one neighborhood to
Right,
represent the whole
exactly. Yeah,
city.
so there was-
Yeah.
And you dilute the vote, so if you have certain ethnic groups that are not represented overall in the voter turnout, but you may have them geographically. Right now, we have Telfair is pretty predominantly one geographical, one voting block. And that meets the Voting Rights Act requirements because that allows this group to elect somebody who looks like them or was their choice. If we go at large, there's a potential that it's diluted and they will never have an opportunity.
So one voting block in one district could, if another district doesn't vote, that voting block in District 1 could.
Control everything.
Could have an
Well,
outside.
It would be
effect.
actually the reverse. So right now, because this one district is heavily concentrated in one well, it's not a minority in the city, it's actually a majority right now. But because it's all concentrated there, they can elect somebody of their nationality, their not using my words properly, but if we dilute it, you put all four together, there's a good chance that with the other three, they will not have that opportunity to elect somebody. So this allows them, their vote to count the same as a vote over here.
Yeah, the district, having the principle of the districting is, to protect everyone's vote, so they don't get overshadowed by other.
Yes, although okay, I guess I was saying you still would have to have someone living in that district, but everyone would get a chance to
Right,
vote
exactly.
on the candidates.
So just the people in that district, so it's just a majority of that district and.
Well, that's what it is now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then we have the overlay of the at-large on it.
So we're good with the, because we have 4 districts, we can have still 2 at large.
And the mayor, yes. We
And the
have a
mayor's
hybrid.
3
So we meet the requirements of the individual districts for the Voting Rights Act.
Okay,
And then by having it at large, you still have the overlaying representation.
Okay, and then when you
if
do that-
notice, our 2 at large are both Grapewood.
okay, so that's helpful. And then when we talk about redistricting to provide equal representation, what was that defined by federal law again? What equal representation meant?
Federal Voting Rights Act, yes, sir.
Okay, so that was that. Okay, so that's helpful. So then, anyway, so then the 430 voting elections, is that?
That's
is there
not
some
federally
council?
required, that's whatever you want. Make a recommendation.
When we had city council here at the last meeting, I did hear a couple of them go, they like having that year off so that they can concentrate on running the city. There's not always a group running for election and slightly distracted, which I like the premise of that idea. I get where you're coming from, where maybe we figure out, I can't right now figure out how to split it more evenly, but
Well,
I like having a year where they're not campaigning and they're working for the city.
Well, one way to do it would be each year you take 3 at-large positions and each of those are up each year. So again, you're getting the citizens involved each year. And then 3 of the years, you're District 1, District 2, District 3, and then 1 of the years, District 4. So, you have 3 at-larges, 3 districts each of those 3 years. And 1 of those years, you have the 4th district be part of that. And so, again, I think that, to me, that was addressing, again, you still get the opportunity for everyone to vote, because you have it at large. A district, or for the reasons we've talked about, got the benefits of that. And I think you also protect against, a quorum turnover in one year, which would be highly disruptive. So I believe would be highly disruptive. So anyway, so that was just one to put that on the table.
So let's assume that we went 3-3-3, just for make it easy. Someone would lose or extend their term just because of the way we redid it. So how would we address that?
That's very easy to do. We have a transition plan, which is what we just implemented the last charter, where we went from 2-year terms to 3-year terms. That I do have a chart and I can count out for you. I can bring that to you.
I'm just,
That part
there is
is
something,
doable.
There's mechanism.
there's mechanism, if we did recommend it and it got passed, there's something already in place.
Yes, so you would decide whether or not an incumbent would lose a year or they would gain a year, depending on where they fell. Because when we went from 8 to 9, we said, okay, you were guaranteed 8 years, you'll get 8 years. Some people landed right at the 8, some people got 9, I think, in the McCutcheon, and somebody else got the potential of 10. But that was what was recommended by the Charter Commission, and that's what council approved. I will tell you that the discussion when they went from 2 years to 3 years is they wanted that year off from campaigning. They didn't like to get elected, learn what was going on, and then have to campaign the very next year. And that was why they wanted to go from 2 to 3 years.
Okay,
So right,
that's what I heard.
So I'm okay with the 3-year term for that, all the stuff you learn, you're just learning it's time. I'm
sure.
good for 3 years. I'm just, was just more the opportunity for the citizens to vote and guard against what I was raising. So
Yeah,
that's what.
So so right now, so 4 council members run in the same election, the
Four
district.
districts, yeah.
And then the at-large run.
Three,
The
that's
next
all
year.
3 at large run the next election, then year 3, if you will, no running. And then you're back to 4-3, it's 4-3-0.
yeah.
I mean, do they get some cohesion from having, like, if we did do it where they were spread out, so someone would always be campaigning, or 2 people you would always have,
2-3, 2-3, 2-3, yeah.
I mean, would there be any ramifications to that we would that we want to consider, or?
Well-
I have not watched our city council, I have to say, so I don't know if or if that's even something that needs to be considered, but just.
Well, what I heard when they were here was that year off is all concentrating on work. Nobody's looking at reelection or,
But was that more as a did that seem to be more of a cohesion factor, or just for their individual position, them saying like, I've been experienced, I know my job now. And
multiple said it, but I can't answer that because
what you
I'm not
didn't,
down, but
right, what did the impression?
multiple people made that statement. That's what I can attest
So
to.
maybe, yeah, if it's just more of an individual thing, then I think that might be something to consider.
So again, just raise it, again,
Yeah,
a good school board, a good, city council, absolutely. I love the idea, but I'm just thinking,
you get a bad one, you gotta wait.
you get that, or you got a risk of a big turnover, so let's just give the
That's
citizens a
good.
chance to
There is
vote.
a recall that they can use.
They can, there's mechanisms, but
Yeah.
anyway, so I just want to put that out there as I read Article 2.01, that's probably what strikes me most.
Do we still have our city council member on the?
Oh, no, Tara is, she's one of y'all.
Yeah.
I thought we had a city council member.
No, she's a board member, or a task force member.
Okay. Any input, Ashley? You're muted. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm definitely, yeah.
It's Tara, right?
Yeah.
Tara.
I think-
Okay, Tara's gone. Let me put my glasses on so I can read.
Wants Tara.
Okay.
Check the waiting room and feed next, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Other reactions, I mean, that's just,
I'm leaving to just leave it as it is. As I heard from multiple city council members, they were happy to leave it as it is.
okay.
Anyone else?
agree, yeah, leave it as it is. Leave it as it is.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's a good discussion,
Mhm.
good,
Well, you hit good points, definitely.
Yeah,
Good
definitely.
points, but there's other mechanisms to address those concerns at the same time.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. It's good.
You had mentioned an email plurality. Did you want to address that?
Oh, okay, thank you. I did have that. I did have another one in this. So it talks about, was it in this one that talks about the, having to get at large? I mean, sorry. You have to get a majority, and if not, then you have a runoff. So other elections, I remember hearing costs of elections and everything. So was there any interest in considering plurality, which just means whoever has the most votes, if you got 2 people running, 3 people running, 4 people, whatever, you have 6 people running, he or she who has the most votes wins. I guess that's what it said, plurality, right? So versus the top 2 going to a runoff.
Yeah.
So is there any interest in that? I know the model thing talks about it. One, I don't, what was that other type of election thing, the rank order, whatever that sounds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
That
think.
sounds confusing, but I don't know.
Rank orders are, yeah, interesting, but they kind of deal with the issue you're talking about. And the only reason I would say that we want to keep the runoff is because if we don't want someone that only got 20% of the vote. You know what I mean? If there were a bunch of people running and we said whoever gets the most, well, what if the most was only 33%? And no one would get to go back and change their vote to say, oh, well, if we're,
So we had
You know
so
what
many people running, it diluted the vote.
yeah, that you have so many that no
Yeah.
one's getting and you don't really know.
That's a good point.
I mean, I would be concerned about that. I wouldn't want
Yeah,
someone.
and I think that's where the rank order is
Yeah,
supposed to address
So
that.
so they know that like, okay, well, if we
Here's
don't
my
get
number
that,
1, here's my number 2, here's my number 3. So you at
right,
least put that in at the beginning.
it's basically like a built-in runoff, kind
Yeah, I
of,
think-
without
I
any
think you're right.
politicking in between.
Yeah.
So.
But that would be my concern with not,
So
just,
just have a plurality.
yeah, is that you would at least have to have a floor, like if you, I mean, maybe if you wanted to say if, make that floor 45 or 40 or something, where you at least are getting close to 50. I would be concerned with someone under, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
That would be,
I haven't seen a plurality done, but I'm happy to go and look for examples and see if I can find others.
Well, I mean, well, the school board does it, right?
Sure.
But they may have a different situation.
mm,
So we do that, so we do have it on the school boards here.
okay.
So you never have a
interesting.
runoff, it's plurality. And so, and obviously, if you got two candidates, you're gonna have majority.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Do they often have more than two people vying for a seat
Yeah, I think we'd have to go look. I mean, sometimes they have four.
For school board.
or for school board? Yeah.
For city council, we have had some that were 4 people and one running for a district. Most of the time it's just 2.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
Usually, anyway, so it's just, again, saving the cost of the runoff
Mhm.
Yeah,
and all these things, or is there another mechanism? Or, again, that rank order, to be honest, I didn't truly follow it, so it might be more voter confusion trying to do it than,
It would be a hard thing to teach the electorate.
yeah, so.
You know what I mean? We would need to really be committed to that.
yeah, most of the residents are used to the system
Right.
and I think I asked last time, the cost of running elections, not that. much.
Actually, I was wrong. Ashley just, did the latest contract. Ashley, could you correct me? The letter is back in.
The cost for this election is about 60,000.
60,000?
Yeah.
Cheaper.
Yeah.
Well, no, and then a runoff would be, you'd be on our own to do it, because we wouldn't be able to split the cost, right? If we had a runoff election, if City Sugarland had a runoff, because right now, city's able to split it with the school board and some others, right?
We're doing it with the county.
With the county,
Yeah.
but if you did a runoff,
We had a special election.
then you'd be on our own.
Yeah.
Now, if it's just a district, then you only got that many people to that point, so, anyway, just bringing it out, is it
No,
something that?
No, you say special election, just so you know, in Texas, we can only have elections in November and May. So there are no like off month elections. So there's always gonna be somebody having an election that could join in.
Okay, so we can't.
There's no
yeah.
special, like
Right.
April or June, I mean, if it's a runoff, yes, but we can't do March because that's the primary. But municipalities can only do the November or May.
Okay.
If that helps.
And then if you did have a runoff situation,
It's still part of that, just, in the ordinance where we call the, election, it says runoff will be this time period
okay.
in Kansas.
I do remember
But
saying.
the cost would be maybe more than 60,000, because we'd be pouring, and compare the.
I thought it was a flat rate once you signed, we're in.
Oh, there
Yeah.
It's a flat rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Now,
don't recall.
can we add something that anyone running for political office has to put up a bond to pick up their political signs after the election? I'm slightly serious on this.
That's supposed to, I think that's supposed to be part of the law.
I have
right?
yet to see someone go pick up their signs.
People, it doesn't get enforced.
Right.
Election code.
Okay, so we can't,
That's already taken care of.
Yeah.
Supposedly, they just don't do it.
Yeah.
so that's why I said put up a bond. They gotta put some money up, if you guys go pick them up, well,
I
you
get
want
to
your
keep a
bond.
bond.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
You
But
get,
then
you
you
get to
have-
keep your, deposit,
So who would decide they were all picked up and how many?
Well, like for my day job, I throw away so many at my day job.
You make $10,000 easy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people just literally, they put them out and leave them.
Oh, yeah.
You drive down 59, they used to stick them on the reflectors on the concrete barriers and they'd be there for months
Oh, yeah.
afterwards.
I worked for the city of Houston when they started having that role,
Yeah.
having the person that picked up the signs to enforce the sign.
Okay, so I think that's all I had was, okay, at large or whatever, we addressed that, talked about what equal representation meant, talked about staggered terms, we said leave as is, just at the plurality or whatever, leave as is. So that's all I have for section two
So
point
the
one.
plurality was leave as is, you didn't want us to do research?
No, I think we're all good with it.
Oh, I thought that, so were you?
So you can give me some time.
Okay.
All right, anybody else, anything for 2.01? Okay, section 2.02.
We did have quite a bit of discussion on this last time.
Okay,
So this was modified at the last election. They required the driver's license, and so a lot of these are required by state law, but they wanted it to be directly listed in
yeah,
there. And they also had quite a bit of discussion as far as being convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, trying to determine what moral turpitude was. And then whether or not a final conviction with all the appeals and everything else. And they their outcome of that, their decision when they made the recommendation to city council was to rely on state law, because once you are convicted under state law, you do lose your office and let the judge and all of them figure out, you know, what a final conviction is.
Yeah, because,
This was probably a 2-meeting discussion, just this provision.
yeah,
Wow.
They spent a lot of time.
I'm not sure if there's other people here that have professional licenses. My license is if I get convicted of a moral turpitude,
Mhm.
and I've asked, and they were just like, don't do anything stupid.
It's like the quote,
Yeah,
with pornography, you know it when you see it.
yeah,
You're right.
That
You
was in
know,
California.
you know moral turpitude when
yeah,
when you see it.
too.
yeah, which funny. The attorney I consulted said DWI doesn't count.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Moral
actually,
turpitude, yeah.
in case this discussion
Yeah.
happens tonight, I
That's
decided to
wrong.
look up what does moral turpitude mean in Texas. It covers a broad variety of things, typically and just generically fraud and dishonesty, crimes related to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
So did you want to make any changes, or are you happy with what was done last time?
So I don't see the words moral turpitude.
I think
That's what you-
It's 03, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She skipped
You
down.
got it, okay. I'm good with 2.02. Anybody else have any good?
Only thing I would change in 2.2 is the where it says that a person has to be here for presiding in the city for a year before the election. I think it should be more than a year.
What are you thinking? 2, 3, 4?
I would say about 4 years.
How about 3? Because that matches a council term.
Hold on. There's a state law that prohibits you from shortening it under a certain amount.
We're not shortening it. We're lengthening it.
Or lengthening, yeah, they're not allowed to lengthen. Research, looking for 2018. Keep talking, I'll keep looking.
That's all I have. That's all I have.
Yeah, because I mean,
Election code, do you remember it, Ashley? If you don't have it off the top of your head,
Yeah.
okay.
I like, I like the idea, if we can do it. But with the term, I'm thinking, city council runs for 3 years, then make the term 3 years.
Right.
So they at least get to know the city before they jump in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Uh,
to your point, there's been several politicians, they just move around.
Mhm.
The guy running for Fort Bend County Sheriff bought a house in Fort Bend, but still lives in Harris County.
Yeah, and you see it on the national, I mean, yeah, you.
I hear it all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, I met with Andy Myers Monday and he had to move from, where he lived, he now lives in the Highlands. They redistricted him and he has to live in district, so he moved 1.45 miles or something.
Okay.
Well, what she's doing that,
18, I'm at one.
everybody's still good with 2.03? We'll come back
I'm
to.
sorry?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, I thought you were looking.
Okay,
Yeah, I just got a computer upside down.
so we're good at 1, we're good at 3.
Yes.
Okay, state law says 12 months.
Okay.
It can't be more.
Have resided continuously in the state. for
Oh,
12
great
months and
idea.
In the
State laws
territory
already
from
have
which
it.
the office is elected for 6 months. Actually, state law says 6 months, but I think you could probably get away with 12 months.
Okay.
I would not go 3 or 4 years.
So we'll stay with the 1 year.
If you wanted to have an 18-year-old, you're allowed to have 18, or you can stick with 21.
I would go in the other direction if anything, but I think 21
Yeah,
is good.
We just
Yeah.
stick with 21.
Yeah,
21, they gotta have at least a little life experience.
Right.
Right.
must be a human being.
Yeah.
Right. No AI.
Oh, my goodness, okay.
That would be terrible.
What about a cat?
Oh, there's one city that
Yeah.
Yeah, you got, there's cases where I think there's a goat mayor
It's a
somewhere.
dog in Texas.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, like up by Marfa somewhere.
yeah, that's.
probably the best one ever.
All right, 2.04.
This also was a point of quite a bit of discussion in the last cycle. They had 2 examples that they cited as to why this came up. We had a situation where we had a council member who was a district council member who ran for mayor. And he ran against our current mayor. They both were running, so obviously only one made it, but he didn't have to resign to run because they were staggered. And they were 2-year terms, he got to stay on there. And so there is some tension because he had run and didn't get that,
Yeah.
as you can imagine, campaigning, you say kind of some stuff. So there's that tension. We also had a situation where a different council member was running for a county office. And there was some concerns that perhaps they were not giving the city as much attention and were focused more on what their issues would be or platforms, and were making decisions based on that next political role. And so this discussion came up. I will tell you that because they are a 3-year term now, it would be interesting depending on which one you're running for. So under the state constitution, if there is more than 13 months remaining left on your term, you automatically resign
Okay.
from your position, which means this next year, when we have the district elections and the following year, we have the at-large election. So the at-large would resign. No, I have it backwards. So at-large could run for district because they have less than 13 months remaining. But if a district council member wanted to run the following year for at-large, say a district council member wanted to be mayor, they would have 2 years left on their term, they would automatically resign. That's a fun little math
Yeah.
game.
I like the way it's stated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
double dipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was also a pretty lengthy conversation. I want to let you know that we spent a lot of time on Article 2.
Anybody have any other comments?
So but it says a member for election other than that of city council, and is mayor considered city council, right? So,
Absolutely.
right, so so they can run for another position on city council, and not have to automatically resign.
Actually, they would. This needs some rewording. I do need to reword it. Because when we did this last year, or I'm sorry, 2020, we did not know if the 2 to 3 years change would be approved.
Right.
And so under state law, Texas Constitution says they will resign. So we need to do some administrative cleanup of that language.
Okay, that's fine.
But yes, sir.
But if they, no, finish it
That was my thought. They're short.
If they do resign and they run for the other position and they lose, can they go back to their original?
No.
Well,
Now
no.
without being reelected.
No, we have to have a special election for that seat. So what happens is that we have candidate filing. And then so you file for this because you're greater than 13, it's an automatic resignation. So you're gonna sit in that, you sit in that seat, you're a holdover until that election. And then as of May, you either your new position or you're out of a job. And you have to wait till the next cycle to come back up. But if they file by the candidate filing deadline, we will have already called a special election for that position, knowing that they were running for that and had resigned. Right? Okay, yeah, she's my election person. That's why she's here.
Okay,
She knows what it's about.
so we're good with 2-4?
Yes.
With,
Well, I
but
have
there's
to-
to be some administrative language.
What, yeah,
We'll see that in the red line.
yeah, because what I heard was like you, I heard and saw. So
Okay.
clean up the language, but we're good with 2-4 that you have to resign if you run for anything. Well, as.
Well, no, if you're at large and you run for the district, you don't because you have
Yeah.
less than 12 months remaining. That's the Texas Constitution. We can make it more restrictive.
Well, and that is another city council and it excludes if you're running, right?
Yeah,
So the way that they drafted this was if the 2 to 3 didn't show, if we didn't go to 3-year terms, if you were to run for a different position, because you were not up there yet, they would keep your job because it was less than 13 months remaining.
Right, but it says other than the city council, and that would be a city council
I thought
position.
that's what you were gonna clean up.
Yes, okay.
Okay, is that what's gonna be
Yes.
cleaned up?
So some of them resign, but not all of them resign because of the 13-month provision.
Let's wait to see the language and then we'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bring in the constitutional
Maybe a
provision.
circle back,
I can make
yeah.
a chart, it'll make more sense.
yeah,
Okay,
Because I was under the
because it sounds
impression.
like this doesn't, the way it's written, I would say it doesn't apply to any city council that's running for,
It applies to half of them.
so that's not how, yeah, then it needs to be
This was
cleaned up.
this was a just in case provision, in case the
Gotcha.
2 to 3, I can
Yeah,
fix this
okay.
for the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Okay,
Compensation.
do we know what the compensation is for city council?
I believe the mayor makes twice what everybody else makes on a monthly basis, but, totals, compensation.
but that's their sole discretion. They can vote themselves a pay raise anytime they want.
They could do every annual budget, yes.
So they get their paycheck and then they get reimbursed for expenses? How does that work? Like who scrutinizes the expenses and makes sure that they're necessary?
But that would be a staff member. And
Staff member reporting to
city manager.
the city manager.
So it would be in accordance with, the statute on gifts, conflict of interest and disclosures.
Okay.
So council members make 10,470 annually, and the mayor makes 20,940 annually.
And that, by that you mean yearly?
Yes,
Okay.
by election.
Elections. Okay,
Well, you know, from May to May.
May to May, okay.
And then any increase would be part of the annual budget that they would submit.
And I can tell you that's this current one. And let's see if they had a raise from last time. Yes. The previous year in 2022, they made 9,650 annually and 19,300.
So,
And I can tell you if they give themselves a raise, the reports, you can see if there's a pattern. Then FY21. At 9,369 and 18,738. So they got a very slight bump that time.
anybody have any comments on compensation?
Oh, good.
We'll move on.
Done a lot of research.
Yeah. Well,
So these are good questions. I'll try to anticipate.
2.06.
No.
Everybody good with 206?
Thank you.
207.
That's what you were talking about, the 12 or 13, that's just 12 months, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of vacancy.
Previously, they had, I think it was 45 days to pick somebody. And by the time you interview and you have people apply, you interview, you do all that. If you're 3 months away from an election, it's kind of silly to do that. But it was also, it was too short of a time period to actually be able to select somebody qualified to sit up there.
Yeah. Everybody good with 207? Okay, 208.
So I had a real nitpicky question, just out of curiosity, when they talk long range, what is long range in the city's language? 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? There's no changes, it's just more informational question. We talk about long range plans.
Like,
Okay.
see.
I see your question. So long range could mean different things depending on the context.
Okay.
So we have a 10-year CIP and they only fund 1 year, but we plan out for 10 years and say, okay, we're gonna do a bond and this is how it costs and this is how we move things around. So once a year, if you go to PNZ or city council, you will have a CIP presentation. And it's not as long as it used to be. Yes, they would go through each item and say, okay, your drainage project for Highlands. Year 2, we're gonna do the feasibility and the architectural. Year 4, we'll fund it, phase 1. Year 6, we'll do phase 2, it'll be done by year 8. And so they look around and see, okay, bond funding, what can be combined together, what is the current life, what is the standard. So for long range for that would be a 10-year CIP. We also have long range, like mobility plans, transportation plans. There's no transportation people.
Okay, so basically, it will vary depending on context,
Yes.
that's what you, okay, so that's what I was looking for, thank you.
Okay, so we're good with 208?
Yes.
Okay, moving on. 209?
Yeah, I was good with that one.
Okay. 209, we're good with? 210?
One small question. What's the official city newspaper?
Who do we post our notices in?
I didn't know we had official, it's, the C says we penalty, something we published in the city's official newspaper. It's like, which one is it? Cause I don't think I get it.
It changes.
It's one of the weekly
It goes between the Sun and the Star.
That's it, yeah,
Yeah.
Sun is, I see that one around sometimes.
So, like,
But we
you
don't
still
do a
have,
Chronicle.
we're old school, you still have to print notices, like if you were to get bankruptcy or something.
Yeah,
And historically, it's always been one of the weekly newspapers that basically bids the cheapest to the city.
okay, so there's a
Print
mechanism, so they bid to post. the
Yeah.
So
Kira
it's
thing.
gotta be circulation over a certain percentage geographical area of the city limits. And so many subscribers, but because they just throw it in everybody's yard, everybody's a subscriber. And
Don't
so.
everybody's yard, but anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So it does change. There's no standard, but I can tell you it's not the Chronicle. Because they're about 8 to 10 times more. They're proud of their publication costs.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I just wonder, is there any value? Well, this thing as it is, but,
Oh, no. it's
or do you just say it's posted on your website or something? I mean, that
Oh, state law does require both.
it requires both. So we have to pick, we have to put in the newspaper by state law. Okay.
So like where I'm at, if you avoid being served, I can do alternative service by putting it in the newspaper. And once I've proven I put it in the newspaper, it's like you've been served and I can keep on going.
Just because you send me an email doesn't mean we've communicated. So,
But by
you said by putting
state
the paper, you can communicate.
law, I have given every reasonable effort to communicate with you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And the newspaper that we do use is the Fort Bend Independent.
Independent, okay, I was not even close.
And is that supposed to go to every citizen?
Yes.
It's online as well.
Mhm.
Interesting.
That's where I go and verify my publications are there.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Okay, so we're good with 210?
Yeah.
Okay, 211.
Straightforward as well.
I'm good with 211. That's pretty much standard language,
Straightforward.
hierarchy.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
And that's just to prevent intimidation, you know, the
Yeah.
council member were to go to one of us and say, I want something. We're afraid to get to the council member, makes us.
Yeah.
Only go through our boss.
Okay, I'm assuming you're good with 211. Okay, 212.
Yeah, that's a definition.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay, we're good with 212. Anybody have anything else? We got a couple circle backs that we'll probably talk at the next meeting.
So my notes for the next meeting is that I'm gonna give you clean language for 204, the resign to run.
Yep.
Well, that's the only note I've had.
That's the only note I have.
Anybody have anything?
Or do we have
No.
a holdover from special one?
Any other notes?
I just have a question about the time of the next meeting, but
Yeah.
so no other notes
And
to,
I owe you a clean, red line for Article 1 that shows it's 25 years instead of 50 years.
Oh, yeah, we got that one.
I just like to make sure I cover it each time so that I go back and watch the movie for the recording, I know exactly what it's.
So I would like to have a request that the target cities that are like Sugar Land. I think I counted 11. I think my little bit of research, and it's not yours as thorough as yours. But I can see the cities, but I haven't researched whether they're charter cities. And I just went by population. You know, I took 100,000 plus or minus 10, because Sugar Land is actually, you know, it's kind of stagnant as far as population goes.
I could tell you if it's a charter city, what's the city? I mean, if you wanted me to do it right now.
Sure.
Okay.
Can you just send it to me in an email?
We can go online, I click on it and see if they have a charter.
I think that's, okay.
That's my cheat sheet.
And so that's
So, like, if you were to-
filtered by population and,
No, this is everybody who has a code in Texas. So if you wanted to say, hey, is Argyle a charter city? Just click on Argyle. Then open it and
I'm sorry, start again.
so if you say, hey, is Argyle a charter? Then I just open up Argyle Code of Ordinances and I look and no, they're not a charter.
Oh,
No, I thought they were. So they don't. No, Argyle is not a home rule city. Or if you were to pick a different one,
We were talking, what was the one, not Pearland, the one past?
Plano.
Plano.
oh, Plano's home rule.
Plano's home rule.
Yeah, she gave me all the information.
Oh, okay.
I have a whole bunch of city, I got
Well, if you'll email them to me and I can tell you, yes.
Well, what I'm looking for is the narrow scope of which cities are chartered and, or
is it charter or benchmark? Which ones are like comparable to us in size and population?
I want a benchmark of the city plus
Yeah.
or minus,
Okay.
say 10,000
Okay.
in population to,
That are also
yeah,
similar to,
similar to our
Okay.
charter.
I can get you that. I have a list of the benchmark cities that we use for zoning questions, for contract questions, for salary questions. I I can, yes,
I just want to look at my leisure.
I'd be happy to. I can send that to you.
Plano was one of them. And you already gave me that information with much.
Which surprised me. I would have thought they would have met since the nineties. Like, I was surprised by that.
Pearland's another one. I think they're as equal,
Okay.
which you've already mentioned.
Yeah, apparently she would have mentioned.
Yeah, they're definitely a benchmark city for us.
McAllen's another one. I think it's also as equal.
Once a fine scotch, but yeah. Gallons of fine scotch. So I had a question on, the next meeting is the 7th, so just kind of check
Yeah, when is the next meeting?
our March schedule and just see if that's still good with people.
It should be March sixth. It's a Wednesday.
March 6th.
March 6th, yeah, March 6th at 5.
5 p.m. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be out of country, but as we said, it's okay.
Are we invited? Please.
Want to come to Kazakhstan?
Been there, I'll go again.
Yeah.
Well, I've been close. I haven't actually, because I've been in the area.
Nice.
Okay, if nobody has anything else, I will call the meeting to a conclusion.
All right.
We're good.
So, yeah, second of that. So if I have any questions, I should send them to you or, because I probably won't be able to participate.
You can send it to me.
Okay, then you'll.
If you send it to me, honestly, then I get forwarded.
Okay.
Okay. meeting's
Don't send
everything.
it to all of us. That would be.
I know, not to do that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do Article 3 next time and Article 4, and then what's the scope of each 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 will be in one, or?
Just kind of depends on how.
You're gonna go pretty quick.
Yeah.
You went through this one about 3 meetings faster than we did last time.
Well, because you already revised it. like-
Because, yeah, they did such.
Yeah, we're tweaking, we're not rewriting.
So
Yeah.
I do have the list